term out-of-body experience is used to describe the sensation of feeling as if you've left your physical body and being able to view yourself and the world from a different perspective. Some people report that they feel they are floating above their body and that they feel the presence of another body. This is referred to as a parasomatic OBE. This other body is sometimes described as being attached to the individual's physical form by a cord. OBEs are considered by some to be a paranormal occurrence. OBEs can occur spontaneously and have been reported linked to drug use and can occur during trauma. OBEs are sometimes a feature of near-death experiences. OBEs can also occur between REM sleep and waking. During this borderline sleep stage, sleep paralysis can still be present, and the imagery of dreaming may spill into wakefulness. Many researchers argue that the sensation of an OBE can be induced in a number of ways, including giving someone anaesthetic and by electrical stimulation of the brain in specific areas. Blank found that stimulation of the temporoparietal junction, including the angular gyrus, can lead to the experience of an OBE. This finding came about by accident, as patients with epilepsy who underwent treatment where these brain areas were stimulated reported the sensations consistent with OBEs. Electrodes were applied to the brain areas while the patients were awake, and they were able to describe the sensations as they were experiencing them. This included one woman who felt she was hanging from the ceiling looking down at her body. Blank 2004 reported that the women involved in the treatment had no psychiatric history and were surprised by the experience. Persinger carried out similar research. This research suggests that OBEs are subjective experiences which result from a malfunctioning of the brain areas involved in the perception of sensory signals. This reductionism may not be very helpful in understanding OBEs. The disruption of physical sensation must be interpreted at a cognitive level to create the complex and varied experiences reported by those who experience OBEs either spontaneously or experimentally. The temporoparietal junction is a multisensory processing region which processes information from various sensors in the body that tell us where we are. When this is stimulated directly, it may create disruption and confusion, as the external sensory information may not match the internal sensation. This may lead to the individual attempting to make sense of the experience using memories, belief systems, and best guesses. For example, a belief in spirit walking may lead the individual to interpret their sensation as paranormal. The role of belief in shaping experience is likely to account for the variations in reports of OBEs. These studies have provided a starting point from which to begin to understand these experiences, and the scientific approach of stimulation studies allows us to establish cause and effect to an extent. However, self-report methods of gauging OBE experiences are subjective. There is no way to corroborate someone else's experience or to tell whether these experiences are the same as those experienced spontaneously. These studies also lack population validity as they involve small samples. For example, Blank's sample was 2 women, each with a pre-existing neurological condition in the form of epilepsy. Urson created a sensation consistent with OBEs without stimulation of the brain by disrupting the input to the brain circuits that process visual and touch sensory information. In other words, he scrambled what they saw and what they felt. He did this by getting participants to wear video goggles through which they could see their body in front of them from the back. A pen was stroked on their back, and at the same time they saw the pen stroke the virtual body. They commonly reported that they felt the sensation on the virtual body and not their own physical body. This suggests that if the sensory input does not match the internal sensation, an OBE occurs. As this study induces an OBE without direct biological stimulation, it implies that the role of cognitive factors is crucial in understanding this experience. This explanation could also account for the occurrence of OBEs in sleep and waking transition. A mismatch between the visual dream imagery and the body location sensors as waking occurs may produce the odd sensation of leaving one's body. Although this study scores many points for being consistent with a scientific approach, this artificial laboratory simulation may fall short of recreating this complex exceptional experience, and as such could be considered to lack validity. The term near-death experience is used to describe a subjective, unusual experience where an individual is close to death or even clinically dead. Common features of NDEs include feelings of intense emotion, an out-of-body experience, movement towards the light, encounters with dead loved ones, and a life review. For some, the individual faces a decision to return to their physical body rather than enter an afterlife. These experiences can be perceived to be pleasant or disturbing. These experiences usually occur during serious trauma, for example during surgery and accidents resulting in injury. Blackmore in 1982 suggests that science can fully explain these experiences. There are a number of biological explanations of near-death experience with evidence to support them. The first explanation we will consider is that near-death experience may be the result of a lack of oxygen to the brain. This is called anoxia. During this state, the neurons fire randomly, which can lead to hallucinations. This random firing, referred to as cortical disinhibition, may explain hallucinations of bright lights and tunnels, which are often features of near-death experience. This is plausible as near-death experiences usually occur during trauma, where breathing may be restricted, which might limit oxygen getting to the brain. The second explanation we will consider is that abnormal neural activity in the temporal lobe may be responsible. Studies where the temporal lobe is stimulated have led to reports of memory flashbacks and body distortions consistent with the reports of near-death experience. This third biological explanation centres upon biochemical causes of NDEs. These experiences might be considered to be hallucinations induced by changes in the chemical balance of the brain. Carr in 1982 suggested that endorphins, the body's natural feel-good chemical, may be responsible. Some NDEs are described as being very pleasurable experiences, where the pain of traumatic circumstances cannot be felt. The individual may experience a state of euphoria consistent with the release of these chemicals, which are the body's natural painkillers. A biochemical change may also be the result of artificial chemical substances. People who experience NDEs often experience them under medication, including anaesthetic during surgery. In fact, NDEs have been induced using drugs such as ketamine. The similarity between ketamine experiences and NDEs have been researched and written about by Janssen, a member of the Royal College of Psychiatrists. Can these experiences be explained entirely at a biological level? The sensations of an NDE may be the result of biological functioning, but belief clearly shapes an individual's interpretation of these sensations. Biological explanations are therefore reductionist. Some psychologists regard the mind and body to be separate entities. This is called the mind-body problem. If they're separate, it leaves room for the existence of a soul, but this view is not shared by all. Although the evidence supports the role of these biological influences, creating something similar to an NDE in a laboratory doesn't necessarily mean that this is how spontaneous experiences occur. Although belief is likely to play a role in shaping our interpretation of these experiences, it may be an oversimplification to assume that everyone who has them is a believer to start with. In fact, some people may turn to religion in order to answer questions raised by a near-death experience. Although little may be clear about the nature of both OBEs and NDEs, one thing that is clear is that these experiences are important to the people they happen to.